sexism, gender identities in young children. Paul Connolly. Negative stereotypes were not just confined to boys, like black boys, black girls were perceived by teachers as potential disruptive but likely to be good at sports. They were more likely to be singled out for punishment than other girls. However, teachers did tend to believe that black girls were good at some subjects such as music and dancing. One girl, for example, was often chosen to come to the front of the class to sing her favorite songs. So this is the whole idea of the black girls in the educational institution. South Asian boys. South Asian boys. South Asian boys have rather different identities compared to black boys. On the local estates, white residents tend to see Asians as alien, which were more distinctive and different from black people. Asians were seen as having different family lifestyles, which were more close-knit than those of the rest of the community, which were seen as different by the virtue of being able to speak languages other than English, and because of religion. Aspect of these views were reproduced among the teachers in the school. So the whole idea of the South Asian boys in the Western educational system. Moving towards Louis Archer. Muslim boys in education. The study of the Louis Archer, the sociologist, on Muslim boys and education. How was the educational performance in Western mode of education? So in race, masculinity, schooling, Muslim boys in education, Louis Archer examined how Muslim boys saw themselves, their schooling and the future. A simple sample, consisted of 31 Muslim boys aged 14 to 15 years. Okay, foreign schools in town, northwest England at she called Milltown. The data were derived from discussion groups led by 3 interviews on discussion leaders, 2 British women of Pakistani heritage and Archer herself, a white British middle class women. Okay, the boys are mainly of Pakistani or Bangladeshi heritage. Okay. So this was a research carried on the Muslim boys and the idea of and how their culture impact the educational institution, the Western educational institution. First, let's do the South Asian boys, the whole idea of the South Asian boys, the South Asian girls, and then the Muslim boys. Education and the whole idea of the breadwinner identity in the South Asian families. With this, I come to the end of this chapter. I've already completed the educational institution. Now next, we'll start with the study of criminology, the criminals. How somebody is perceived as a criminals. So let's start the idea of criminology. Crime and deviance. Okay. So we'll start the idea of crime and deviance. You know what is crime? So there are different types of crime: the white collar crimes, the green crimes, state sponsored crimes. So it's a huge chapter. The whole idea of deviance, how an individual comes to become is seen as deviant, what the norms and values of the society that the individual stop following that leads to deviant activities, how in one society a certain action is considered as deviant, however in other society the same action is not considered as deviant. And moving towards deviance, we'll start with health. What they done. And then we'll start with the institution of the health. Health, medicine and body. From the perspective of the different sociologists. Health is not merely the absence of disease but the state of complete physical, mental, spiritual and social well-being. So here we'll define what is health and illness. The theoretical approaches to illness, like what is the functionalist perspective on health and illness, the Marxist perspective, the feminist perspective, the interpretative perspective, how someone is classified as ill, what are the interpretation used by the doctor to classify someone as ill or sick. The postmodern perspective on health. Very interesting chapter. Already done now. Further time. I'm thinking to start with health, not with crime and deviance. So first I have to revise. This is done. Almost educational institution is complete. Okay guys, I'm going to revise now. So I'll be revising the Enlightenment, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution that led to the emergence of sociology as a scientific discipline. You know, how did sociology emerge as a discipline? When did it emerge and what social condition or the environmental condition shaped, shaped the discipline of sociology? The notes are there in my phone, so I have to read through my phone. Because from today I have to start writing, I have to give test. Because I just don't read yesterday. will give a revision fastly. You have to write the answers, and I start with geography. Just मेरे पास 15 minutes है. 15 minutes में मैं revise कर लूँगी. Okay. So I have already done the enlightenment process. What is modernity? So modernity is a Latin word meaning moderns. Modern means something new, something different. It is not fixed. It is context specific, different from traditional. So Europe underwent many changes, the political, social, economical changes that led to the structural and institutional changes in Europe. And emergence of sociology can be traced back to time period of history. So different phases of Europe. First, it was the Dark Ages. Then comes the Renaissance period, wherein scientific and culture change happened. Then comes the political change, that is in terms of the French Revolution, and then the economical in terms of Industrial Revolution. Certain changing agents. First of all, the reason for the change was the Eastern system in Europe and the dominance of the nobility and the king and the church as well, because church had a very dominant position, and there was a nexus between the church and the king. So there was Eastern system, similar like the stratification system that divided the different social group into different segments. Then come the changes brought in by the political philosophers like Montesquieu, Rousseau, Locke, Hobbes, and the reformers and the scientists. They brought in changes like Nicholas Copernicus, and the commercial revolution was brought in by the Christopher Columbus, who discovered America. Philosophers, scientists, yes, reformers again. The scholars, who were some of the scholars like Dante Divine, Dante, he wrote Divine Comedy. So these were the scholars that were trying to raise the consciousness of the people at that period of time when Europe was undergoing tremendous change in the scientific and the institutional sphere. They tried to bring true consciousness among the people. So Dante wrote Divine Comedy, Montaigne wrote What Do I Know, and Thomas More Utopia. These are the famous book that was written at that period of time. Then scientists like Nicholas Copernicus, he claimed that geocentrism, that the theory the sun revolves around the earth is wrong, and he proposed heliocentrism, that it is the earth that revolves around the sun, it's not the sun that revolves around the earth. So the geocentrism theory was proposed at that time by the dominant church. So in order to prove the dominant church wrong, Nicholas Copernicus came up with his own evidence that proved that it's the earth that revolves around the sun, not vice versa. So scientists, okay, done. From geocentrism to heliocentrism, we can give the example of Nicholas Copernicus. Then we have Francis Bacon, who was the father of empiricism. So just you have to remember the name of Francis Bacon. Okay, so there are also religious reformers like John Calvin and Martin Luther King. They all undermined the dominance of the church in the religious sphere, and they claim that it is possible to get access through God without the church. So that's what led to the emergence of different sect in Christianity, that is a Protestant ethic, the Protestant sect, that were more rational than the Christians. So the Protestantism, what were their basic theory? That there should be only one scripture, justification through faith, and universal priesthood of believers. Then comes the political philosophers like Machiavelli, who wrote the book Prince, where he said that in the book Prince, he said that he have found panacea for all the ills in all powerful centralized monarch. That it is a centralized monarch, all the ills in the society is happening due to centralized monarch. So Machiavelli wrote Prince. The Prince book is very famous, and wherein he proposed the idea that the centralized monarch is responsible for all the ills in the society. Then comes the Hobbes, who envisioned rational control state as a natural outcome of evolution nature of the society. When the society evolves, then the state should then there should be checks and balances on the state. There should be state should not be controlling people, rather people should exercise checks and balances on the state. Then comes John Locke, who saw right mix of selfishness and selfness of collective happiness as the pillars of the good state. Then comes in French Revolution, the different political scientists of the French Revolution, that is the Voltaire. So Voltaire talked about urged people to form society which is not imposed of them. That means individualism. So he spoke on individualism. Montesquieu spoke on the concept of separation of the powers and checks and balances on the state. Then we have the Locke. Locke spoke on right to property, right to privacy, and J.J. Rousseau, he spoke on freedom of speech and expression. Then comes economic modernity, wherein different economists came to give their own explanation. Like Adam Smith, who proposed a laissez-faire state, that means the market should not be controlled by the state; it should be free and should be allowed to operate on its own. Then comes David Ricardo, who proposed a theory of comparative advantage. Then comes Jerry Bentham, who came up with the theory that materialism can lead to happiness among the people. That कि ज़्यादा पैसा मतलब ज़्यादा happiness. That's what theory was propounded at that period of time by all this economists. That in turn led to the whole concept of capitalism and the industrial revolution. And J.S. Mill reduce progressive tax and increase inheritance tax. So he was the one who proposed that the state should reduce progressive tax and increase inheritance tax. So encourage people to go for act utilitarianism using rule of utilitarianism. So the whole utilitarian theory was proposed at that period of time. So multiple changes were taking place in all the sphere of the institution, like the economical, political, cultural, scientific, that led to overall change in Europe and the emergence of today's society, in the society which we are living today, modernity, right? So this is done. So what happened in capitalism? Now we are in capitalism. Feudal mode of production has disappeared. Now we are in capitalist mode of production. Okay. So a new capitalist class emerged and a new middle class inflated. So there was a new capitalist class. So capitalism led to the in capitalism a new sections of the class emerged in the form of the new middle class, what we call as a new middle class. So earlier there was no as such concept of the new middle class. One of the most fundamental aspects of the new order was degradation of labor. However, modernity, there were also certain ills of the modernity. It was not that everything was good and happy. There were certain ills of the modernity, like it led it led to the development of a new class called the proletariat class, what we call as the labor class. So their wages were very low. They lived hand-to-mouth existence. They had to work for long hours, but their wage was very less, and the morality also led to the emergence of slums. So one of the most fundamental aspects of the new order was degradation of labor and a new kind of urban world with most grim and overcrowded slums, which led to new kinds of problems. So if you see the data, so in 1810 only 20% of the people lived in cities in Britain, but in 1910 it doubled to 80%. So that's how urbanization happened during the period of industrial revolution. More people were moving to in cities in search of good opportunities and good jobs. So at that period of time, when so much of changes were happening, tremendous changes were happening in Europe, and modernity was coming. At that period of time, sociology emerged as a scientific discipline to explain the ills, the problems caused by modernity. So whatever problem happens in the modern world, in even today contemporary world, everything is explained by sociologists, because sociology is the subject of change. It emerged when there was widespread changes in the European society. And there are also and in sociology we also have certain research, to come up with theories. We do not just use commonsensical knowledge to say to develop theories. So we come up with research in sociology, like hello, hello, what do you mean this street? Hello, Gil. So all these changes were taking place, and at that time only sociology emerged as a scientific discipline to explain the changes and the problems caused by the tremendous changes in Europe. From traditional society, we were moving towards modern society. So the research method, that is used in sociology to do research and promulgate theories. We do research and we promulgate theories. So we use scientific research, like positivist method. Positivist is like a scientific research, like questionnaires. We use questionnaires, we use interviews, we use unstructured interviews, we use participant observation, we do field study, to get access to data and to promulgate theories after getting access to data. And that's why there are multiple research methods that is used in sociology by different school of thought, and there are multiple theories, on a specific subject or in a specific topic by different school of thought. There are there are different school of thought in sociology to explain the problems caused by modernity. Like we have functionalist school, we have Marxist school, we have feminist school, we have interpretive school, we have postmodernist school, we have phenomenology school. So there are multiple schools, to explain the changes that was happening in the society and to explain the institutional changes that took place in the society at that period of time. So it's a very vast subject and but very interesting subject. It explains almost everything that is happening in the society, from political to economical to environmental, everything. So what was happening in Europe at that period of time? So Europe was in the dark ages, feudal mode of production. There was each state system and the king, and there was a nexus between. हाय गिल, एक्चुअली गिल, अगर ये सब्जेक्ट सोशलॉजी सब्जेक्ट है, ये एक्चुअली चेंजेस पढ़ता है, जब चेंजेस हो, आई कैन एक्सप्लेन इन हिंदी एज वेल. सो सोशलॉजी इज़ अ डिसिप्लिन, एक सब्जेक्ट है जो सोसाइटी में जो चेंजेस होते हैं वो उसको पढ़ा जाता है. तो ये सोशलॉजी तब आया था जब यूरोप में बहुत सारे चेंजेस हो रहे थे. हम अचानक से मॉडर्न वर्ल्ड में तो नहीं घुस गए. पहले जो ट्रेडिशनल वर्ल्ड था, पीजेंट, फार्मर्स, राजा महाराजा का दुनिया था, राइट. सो वो जो चेंजेस हुआ, किंग्स का, नोबल्स का और चर्च का, रिलीजन भी तभी के टाइम में बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रॉन्ग था. तो उस टाइम में सबसे पहला चेंजेस यूरोप में आया, उसके बाद इंडिया में आया, क्योंकि यूरोपियंस इंडिया को कॉलोनाइज किए तो उसने अपना मॉडर्न थिंकिंग भी और मॉडर्न आइडियाज़ और मॉडर्न एक्सपेरिमेंट्स भी लेके आया इंडिया को. एंड देन इंडिया ऑल्सो स्टार्टेड इज पाथ ऑफ मॉडर्निटी, और हम लोग भी कैपिटलिज्म में घुस गया. सो जो पहले यूरोप में सबसे पहले चेंजेस हुआ था ये सबका, यूरोप भी पहले ट्रेडिशनल था, जिसको हम डार्क एजेस ऑफ यूरोप बोलते हैं, जिसमें ई स्टेट सिस्टम था. पीजेंट्स नीचे रहेगा, किंग ऊपर रहेगा, जो स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन होता है. एंड तो स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन था, राजा और चर्च का नेक्सस था. जो यूरोप का जो राजा था वो बहुत वॉर को फंड करता था अलग अलग जगह को, जिसकी वजह से लोगों को खाना नहीं मिलता था. तो पीपल वर डाइंग ऑफ हंगर, मैल न्यूट्रिशन, एंड द पीजेंट्स हैड टू पे हेवी टैक्स टू द किंग्स एंड द नोबल्स. तो वो लोग तो मज़े कर रहे थे, लेकिन पीजेंट्स और कॉमन सफ़र कर रहे थे. सो आई एम नॉट इन एनी क्लास, आई एम डूइंग मास्टर्स. ओके, आई एम डूइंग माई मास्टर इन लॉ फ्रॉम बॉम्बे यूनिवर्सिटी. सो दिस इज़ द थिंग. तो उस टाइम में चेंजेस आए जो यूरोप में. चेंजेस कैसे आए? तभी के टाइम में जो रैशनल सोचने वाले लोग थे, जो मिडिल क्लास रैशनल सोचने वाले लोग थे, जैसे पॉलिटिकल थिंकर्स थे, साइंटिफिक एरिना से लोग थे, जैसे यू हैव हर्ड द नेम ऑफ निकोलस कॉपरनिकस, यू नो। तो पॉलिटिकल साइंटिस्ट थे जैसे कि रोजियो मोंटेस्क्यू, जिसने बोला कि राजा के ऊपर भी चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस रहना चाहिए। तो ये सिस्टम चेंज हो रहा था, यू नो, फ्रॉम मोनार्की दे वर मूविंग टुवर्ड्स डेमोक्रेसी की बात होने लगी कि लोगों को क्यों इतना परेशान होना पड़े, यू नो, राजा के ऊपर भी चेक्स एंड बैलेंस लगाओ, पावर सिर्फ एक आदमी के हाथ में पावर नहीं होना चाहिए, पावर सेपरेट करो। इसलिए आज हम देखते हैं ना, टुडे वी हैव पार्लियामेंट, वी हैव प्रेसिडेंट, यू नो, एग्जीक्यूटिव, वी हैव पार्लियामेंट, वी हैव एग्जीक्यूटिव, वी हैव जुडिशरी। तो हमारे पास 3 ब्रांचेज है गवर्नमेंट के, एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के, जो अलग अलग काम करते हैं। तो पहले तो ऐसा था नहीं, पहले तो राजा ही सब कुछ करता था। सो दैट्स हाउ द चेंजेस हैपेंड इन यूरोप, एंड दिस यूरोपियन चेंजेस वॉज ब्रॉट इन टू इंडिया थ्रू कॉलोनिज्म। आपको पता ही है, डिफरेंट कॉलोनियल पावर्स आए, फ्रेंच आए, पोर्टुगीज़ आए इंडिया को कॉलोनाइज करने के लिए, फिर लास्ट में ब्रिटेन आया। सो वी ऑल नो दैट। तो हम लोग चेंजेस एक्सप्लेन करें, तभी के टाइम में जो इतना ट्रेमेंडस चेंज हो रहा था, वैल्यूज़ में चेंज हो रहा था। पहले कलेक्टिविटी था, मतलब सब मिलजुल के रहते थे। अब देख रहे थे कि मॉडर्न सोसाइटी में इंडिविजुअलिज्म की तरफ घुस रहे थे, जैसे जॉइंट फैमिली से न्यूक्लियर फैमिली की तरफ आ रहे हैं, और लोग इंडिविजुअल प्रेफरेंसेस को ज़्यादा बेनिफिट देने लगे रैदर देन कलेक्टिव प्रेफरेंसेस। ठीक है, तो ये सब चेंजेस को पढ़ने के लिए, और चेंजेस की वजह से बहुत सारे इश्यूज़ भी आ रहे थे सोसाइटी में। ऐसा नहीं कि चेंजेस बहुत अच्छा था, नो, और एक रात का चेंजेस नहीं था, ईयर्स, सेंचुरीज, आई मीन डिकेड्स का चेंजेस था। तो ये चेंजेस को पढ़ने के लिए, जिसकी वजह से बहुत सारे इश्यूज़ आ रहे हैं सोसाइटी में, सोशलॉजी आया एज अ सब्जेक्ट जो ये चेंजेस को पढ़ता है। आज भी जो चेंजेस हो रहे हैं, यू नो, वी आर मूविंग टुवर्ड्स फ्रॉम कैपिटलिस्ट मोड ऑफ प्रोडक्शन, वी आर मूविंग टुवर्ड्स इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन 4.0, जहाँ हम आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, IT सेक्टर रिवॉल्यूशन के बारे में बात करते हैं। सो ये भी सोशलॉजी पढ़ता है। सो वी स्टडी ऑल द चेंजेस दैट इज हैपेंड। पहले कैसा था, अब कैसा है, और आज क्या चेंज होने वाला है। अब बोला जाता है कि हम लोग मॉडर्निटी खत्म हो गया, हम लोग पोस्ट मॉडर्न वर्ल्ड में घुस चुके हैं, यू नो। इसमें बहुत सारे थिंकर्स हैं, बहुत सारे स्कूल्स ऑफ थॉट्स हैं। आई होप इट्स क्लियर। अगर मैं शॉर्ट टर्म में मैं समझाऊँ तो ऐसा समझ सकते हो, कॉमनर्स के लिए जिनको नहीं पता है ये सब्जेक्ट के बारे में। ओके गाइस, ऑलरेडी 30 मिनट्स, मेरा सेशन 30 मिनट्स का रहता है, डोज डोंट नो मी। 30 मिनट्स का रहता है। आफ्टर दैट आई टेक ब्रेक एंड अगेन आई कम बैक आफ्टर 5 मिनट्स, 5 to 10 minutes। ओके, तो सी यू अगेन, बिकॉज आई हैव टू रिवाइज दिस, और मुझे लिखना भी है आंसर। सो मैं, जो लोग न्यू है, मैं बता देती हूँ कि मेरे पढ़ने का मेरा एक स्टाइल है, वेर इन आई ट्राई टू एक्सप्लेन थिंग्स टू अदर्स वॉट एवर आई हैव स्टडीड। मैं ऑलरेडी सब कुछ पढ़ चुकी हूँ, देयर इज नथिंग दैट आई हैवंट स्टडीड, तो मैं वो एक्सप्लेन करने की कोशिश करती हूँ, बिकॉज इट इज सेड कि एक बार आप दूसरे को समझा दो, देन यू ऑल्सो नो इट, राइट। भले ही दूसरा समझे कि नहीं समझे, यू कैन आस्क मी इफ यू डोंट अंडरस्टैंड। सो दैट्स हाउ आई स्टडी। सो इट्स अ डिसेंट्रलाइज पैटर्न ऑफ स्टडी, यू नो। ये मेरा स्टाइल है पढ़ने का, गोइंग लाइव, एंड यू आर मोर डिसिप्लिन विथ योर स्टडीज एंड ऑल, एंड मोर अकाउंटेबल एज वेल। ठीक है, थैंक यू नैन। सो मैं अभी जा रही हूँ, आई एम डन, मतलब मैं आई विल कम आफ्टर हाफ एन आवर आफ्टर ड्रिंकिंग टी। फिर मुझे दूसरा सब्जेक्ट स्टार्ट करना है। आज का ये वाला का टास्क ख़त्म हो गया। ओके, बिकॉज आई हैव माई एग्जाम्स लाइंड अप आफ्टर 6-7 months, सो आई हैव टू डू एवरीथिंग, यू नो, रैपिडली, जल्दी जल्दी करना। एंड आई एम डूइंग माई मास्टर्स, दोज हू डोंट नो मी, I'm doing a master's in law from Bombay University, Government Law College. So I'll be back in some time.